Hi everyone, welcome to the iATL and welcome to another really exciting session that we're doing state-of-the-art connected vehicles with Dr. Alex Hainen today. So first of all, I wanted to welcome Dr. Alex Hainen. Welcome to the show today. And one thing I do want to say about today is we're just bringing one person in, so Jessica's not going to be joining us today, so it's up to me to do the housekeeping. First off, we have noticed on Zoom, because of COVID-19, they've reported back to us that they're not broadcasting everything in HD right now. So if you find that your output isn't the greatest, there's going to be a link in the chat box that you can click on that will take you directly to a YouTube stream where you can access it. Secondly, if you guys can all chat in your questions directly into the Q&A side, and then I'm going to try to answer those as we're talking with Alex. And also, if you're on the YouTube link, if you put it into the comments there, those questions will also come through to me. So follow through like that. So first of all, welcome Alex, and please, everyone, bear with us because there might be some audio problems and things like that. It's our first time doing an interview. So, Alex, the first question I wanted to ask you was, tell us a little about Alex. You know, what's your background? Where do you come from?
Peter, I'm just noticing over in the chat there that we got some audio things that are there. Just double checking on that one. Is that all right?
You sound perfect to me. Bill, does he sound good? Yeah. Yeah, you sound perfect. You sound perfect, right. Alex.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so I'm Alex Hainen. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Alabama. I've been here for about 6 years now. My background was I did my undergrad at Michigan Tech in civil engineering. I spent 5 years at Purdue before I came here. Purdue, I did my master's and my PhD in traffic engineering with Darcy Bullock. So for anyone on the call who knows Darcy, I talked with him today, so he's doing well. But and then came down here to Alabama in 2014 and been here since.
And what kind of things, I mean, what kind of projects and exciting things have you been doing? Because you've been at the university for quite some time now. You know, what are some of the interesting projects that you've been involved with?
Yeah, the fun part here, the collaboration with ALDOT and Tuscaloosa Department of Transportation has been outstanding. That's what makes the projects especially fun. Getting out to the field, working on some of the coolest and latest and greatest topics and issues around here, I think that's what really keeps me going. The biggest thing that we had starting back in 2015 was we had a signal performance measures project where we were bringing 85 intersections online across 5 corridors here in Tuscaloosa. The team of students, graduate students, research engineers, colleagues, consultants, technicians, everyone in there. I mean, it's been a huge effort that we've been doing over the years. So tying that all together, bringing all that data back on fiber so we can start to make improvements around here, using things that we've done in the past. That's been the project that has been the most fun. So up until recently, though, there's some real cool stuff that's coming right now that's getting even more exciting. So that kept me busy for most of the first 3 years that I was around here. And now we're starting to shift more into the connected vehicle realm. And so that's what we're starting to spend more of our time and effort on. The future on that one is still trying to predict the future, I think, at this point. But we have some really cool practices and approaches that we're doing here.
So what are the kinds of things that that you learn from actually that information that you receive from there? You know, from the performance measures data?
Yeah, the performance measures data, the biggest thing that we were looking at was we were trying to watch traffic and make sure that everyone was able to get around town, and that we look at progression, arrivals on green. If you've heard me talk before or have talked with folks in that, the link pivot algorithm, Chris Day, he was a colleague from grad school, and Tom Brennan, we worked a whole bunch on that. And so for corridors, when I came to Tuscaloosa, this was an awesome thing. I don't think it was an accident. Tuscaloosa is a series of corridors that are all tied together. So it was really, really a perfect setup to be using that algorithm. So when you ask about what we were able to find, we were pulling data from those intersections, making improvements. Anywhere from 5 to 15% is pretty typical for what we were able to achieve. There's ones that were higher than that. And so it was a chance to go out there and do lots of equipment upgrades, lots of communication upgrades, start pulling back data, and really have some success around here. So the neat thing is, you drive around Tuscaloosa, is it perfect? Not quite yet. And that's exciting for me. When I drive around, I see things that there's still yet work to be done. The thing is, though, if I was to rewind the clock back to 2015, if we didn't go through all that hard work, I really wonder where it would be at now. So it's fun. If you come to Tuscaloosa, I'd be glad to drive you all around, show you what we've got going on. But so the data coming back, the high resolution signal performance measures, that's what we pull and collect. We pull that daily, look at that, assess it. We've had a lot of help. Again, colleagues at ALDOT here in West Central Region have been fantastic. It is an outstanding group here. And I mean, working with lots of DOTs, there's just a lot of collaboration that's going on, and that's really fun. So working with those folks. Also, more recently, we have a regional traffic operations program here, an RTOP program, similar to what Georgia Department of Transportation did. We have a pilot here, and so Jason Taylor, Thomas Motz, they have been great to work with and also help to do some of the heavy lifting on the data and calculations and such. So it's been sort of an all hands on deck. I think that we're always tinkering and tweaking and adjusting and trying to do better. So I try to keep my eye a little more on the research end with technology for what's coming, but then ultimately we need to get back and make sure that we're making things better and safer for drivers.
So you alluded to some of the interesting new projects that you've been doing, and I know we've been involved with you for over 3 years. Can you talk us through how you went through your process and how you actually got to pretty much running one of the most state-of-the-art connected vehicle systems in the country?
Yeah, that was actually a pretty fun story. Once we started working on all the signal research around town here, my deans, my bosses came to me and they said, hey, it looks like things are going quite well. Is there anything we can do to support you? And I was on the spot right there. I had no answer ready. And I said, you know, one thing I think that we really could do, this was back when AASHTO was really pushing the 2020 challenge, where we wanted 20 intersections that were broadcasting SPAT. And so I said, I think that would be something great for us to try to work towards, especially on the research front. I didn't have any active project in that realm yet because it was still very early on. And the dean said, well, go out and figure out what that would take to do that. This is where it gets even more exciting. The support from the DOT. Carrie Neesmith, Chris Hillier, they shuttled me around all that summer, I think of 2016, to AASHTO. I think I went to SCOTE, the Subcommittee on Traffic Engineering. I went to, it was STISMO at the time, and I forgot the new name of it. But I talked with, and this is where hopefully this information starts to become really helpful to folks. I started talking with a lot of connected vehicle radio manufacturers. So specifically people who are making DSRC radios. We came really close to placing an order on 85 of those radios is what we expanded this into. We realized that 20 was great, but really for this adoption to take off, a widespread deployment was really going to help. And so we said, let's do all 85. And when we started looking at buying these radios, this is where I learned that I didn't just want to buy radios. I needed to figure out, what do I want to do with this platform and how do I actually deploy it and implement it? The scary reality for me is if we would have pulled the trigger on that purchase, I would have had a pallet of 85 radios showing up to my office, and I would have had to do a whole lot of software stuff, which I am not that person. I'm happy to say that. So we started looking around. I'll keep the story short here, but Siemens was doing some work in the that I heard about at one of the GRITS workshops. It's our Gulf Region ITS. And so I talked with Siemens about what they were doing with Thea, and I couldn't get a lot of details. And Tim Britt, I will always give Tim credit for this one. Tim was the person who put me in touch with Applied Information, And Peter, that's when I started talking with you and Brian and learning a whole lot more about, instead of just buying radios, what do we actually want to try to do? And so when we looked at doing our deployment, we were pushed a direction going towards the connected vehicle to network, the CV to N path. I will talk more about that later on, I'm sure. Basically, it's connected vehicle technology that's over cellular networks. And normally when you say that, everyone cringes at that and they start to say, you cannot do that. And it's interesting. We'll pull a video up here later on when we start to talk about this, but it depends on the application that you want to look at. And so when we started saying, what do we actually want to do? What do we hope to change? What do we hope to influence? When we started looking at that, connected vehicle to network made a lot of sense. However, it was important at that time that we do have the DSRC technology out there for testing to involve colleagues from electrical engineering, computer science, cybersecurity. This is a moving target in a lot of ways, as far as, especially everyone on this call likely knows, what's going on with DSRC right now? What's going on with CV to X? What is the CV to N? And trying to make the right decision on that early on that was a challenge. So Peter, let me pause there. Let's see where we're at in the story on this, and let's see what questions you might have, that details I may have glossed over.
No, you explaining that story great. That's all I can say. Is it actually, one of the things I would ask is, why did you deploy both DSRC and cellular? What was the rationale behind that?
Yeah, the DSRC was really what everyone was touting as the future. The space had been reserved since '98. At that point, we were 10 years in and really thinking that DSRC, this is eventually going to finally be the future. A lot of things have changed in the last 6 months or so. And so DSRC out there on the research end was important. Again, to answer the ASHA SPAT challenge, I think ASHA was pretty specific. We went back and forth on that one, whether CV to N counts as broadcasting SPAT when we got down to that. So when we were looking at the DSRC technology, that was just the traditional platforms that had been used for any connected vehicle research up to that point. The major issue that we ran into really quickly is we said, okay, let's say we put out these radios everywhere, all around Tuscaloosa, Northport. Here's the question that gets hard fast is who's going to use it? Because unless at that time you were driving a 2017 Cadillac, I think it was an ATS or CTS, that was the only vehicle that had a DSRC onboard unit on it. So we were putting this thing out there knowing there's not going to be any users on it, and that part never made sense to me. So as we kept talking through this, that's where the CV to N side with the connected vehicle app through a smartphone, which everyone in the world has, that was actually a really cool solution that can get that type of technology out there now for drivers to be using. We'll show a video of the drive through Tuscaloosa, and on that drive, that's been on the street now for almost 3 years. So when we're looking at that, that's really neat that that's out there. Anyone can use it. It's free. So instead of going out and buying a $1,500 radio to wire into your vehicle, we didn't know how well that would scale. And I think there are deployments like M-City and others around the country that have outfit fleet vehicles or other test vehicles. We didn't really, I don't know that we would have done that quite as well as those folks had. And so for us, we were trying to look for an easier way to get this out. And so for those of you on the call who have ever talked with Applied Information, Brian is very, very passionate about using technology that's here now to do, and this is kind of key, what we want to do. For us, we weren't really looking at platooning. We weren't looking at cars following milliseconds apart. We were looking at operational improvements that we could make. We were looking at safety applications. We were looking at things along those lines, which did we absolutely have to have 1/10 of a second communication, or could we have gotten away with slightly less with technology that we could widely deploy to drivers and users? And I should note, not just drivers, also, when you start to tie this into, you're looking at travelers, right? It's travel safely, not vehicle safely. So being on a university campus, we do have pedestrians and bikes that are around here. And so this has functionality that we're able to get to those users also. So it was really cool to be able to answer all of these questions or meet all these objectives and help everyone in the regards that I just mentioned.
So what are some of the, the applications that you need more people on the roadway? You talked about hey, we need to get more people on the roadway or more people connected. What do you want to use that data for, and what are some of the safety applications that you were talking about?
This is really fun. Those applications, US DOT, I have to come back to this quite often as a reality check. They have a list of about 30 to 50 applications, I think, that are out there that whoever looks at that list, if you look at it, it may be cool to you. If I look at it, I may find a different application that's neat to me. So in 2018, there was a group from UA and ALDOT who went out west on a scan tour, and they met with folks from Wyoming DOT, I think Colorado DOT, Tony English, and I'll talk about that visit that we did earlier this year. So when we came back from that, we looked at what do we actually want to use this deployment for? And so those were tough questions to answer. To say we want to go out and do DSRC, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me when I say that anymore. To say we want to do connected vehicles, that's still a little vague. It's what objective are we trying to achieve with the technology? The other thing, and I'll talk about this in just a second, the other thing that I would note is I have talked with some other folks who've said that you need to identify very clearly an objective and then select technology. That's a hard one for me to do, because to put out a single use object or deploy for something that specific, I'd rather have something that will have legs into the future. And I'll talk about our ATCMTD project later on, where we're trying to stay ahead of where technology will go. That probably is impossible when I say that out loud and listen to it. But as we look at the radios that we're getting ready to deploy, I think Applied Information has done an awesome job thinking through how that's going to be. We've interacted with them quite a bit about how we can do that better than we did on our first deployment. So with the DSRC, for example. So our applications, when we came back from that scan tour, there were two applications, and this will be a fun one to share. ALDOT identified one and UA identified one. And the neat part about that is the one that ALDOT identified, we had a very specific freight problem here in town. We have a route that's very, very critical that we were looking at, and there were several other freight projects that were going or getting ready to start in the state. So we started looking at a freight priority system. Now, there are a lot of points that people can jump on here, and I'll get to talk about a lot of those. The freight priority, what we're looking at is we have a Mercedes-Benz factory that's in Vance, Alabama, around milepost 89. And there's a critical supply chain that comes through town, through 26 signals, out on the freeway. There's a lot of construction. And we were looking at reliability of vehicles, and not just freight necessarily, but that was just one application. The neat thing is that you'll see that this actually extends into transit quite well that we're looking into, or other vehicles. So with that freight system, what we're looking at is what can we do to improve the reliability of that just-in-time, just-in-sequence delivery while minimizing delay to drivers. So I've had a grad student, Sufyan Talukder, and also two research engineers, Abai Lidby and Elsa Tedla, and also a colleague, Travis Atkinson. And we've been working on that for over roughly a year now. And that's something that we've been able to achieve as far as helping vehicles get through the system more efficiently while minimizing delay to other drivers. So that was ALDOT's interest that they wanted to look at. And I think it's a great topic. A lot of it is from Blaine Leonard out in Utah with the transit work that they have done out there. Those folks are leaders out at UDOT. So I've had fun working with Mark and Jamie and Matt over the years. The research topic that I wanted to look at, and this will be the smartest idea if you actually had to corner me and try to figure out what that was trajectory-based signal control. And I will have a video on this towards the end elaborating on this and showing exactly what that is. Trajectory-based signal control is trying to move away from traditional zone or point detection. Every controller that you see in the background behind me here, every one of those relies on zone detection, point detection, maybe camera or radar, but most of it is all done channel-based with either channel on, channel off. And then we use that channel on to call or extend phases, channel off to gap or terminate phases. And so there's a great picture that Mark Taylor shows where he has just a few little areas of a map exposed, and that's all that a traffic signal actually sees. It's just wherever you've got detection, that's it. what we were hoping to do was with connected vehicles, if you were to use the basic safety message, the BSM, and have a table of data for every single vehicle approaching that intersection, from a traffic engineering standpoint, what do you do with that data? None of the controllers behind me are able to receive that data and call or extend phases or make any sort of control changes or adjustments at that intersection. Radar is getting kind of close. There's one mode that they'll mention, I'm sure, as far as the dynamic red, where if you have a vehicle coming through the intersection, there are ways to extend that. What we were looking at is more functional operation as far as just running free. Can we improve on that if I have trajectories from vehicles coming, say, 1,000 feet out? Sufyan and Abai and Elso and Travis and I, we've been finishing up a paper that made great improvements over free operation, which I think most people would say that's not that hard to do. But it's with technology that we're using to bridge a gap between when we actually get 100% connected vehicles and right now. So the two topics, just to be clear, reiterate, would be the freight priority system and also the trajectory-based signal control. That, for me, is the most exciting thing that I get to think about. We're working really hard on that. I've polled every controller manufacturer. There's one that we're working really closely with, and they have an awesome approach to it. So I think several others will be looking into it in the near future. And there's already people out there. A guy in Colorado Springs is just doing incredible things already. So we're just playing along and doing our part to keep studying and trying to figure out how we can, again, on the connected vehicle side, it's going to take a while to implement. Are there things that we can do in between and until connected vehicles actually get adoption?
Now, Alex, one of the things that I've heard you talking about as well, which is one of the applications we were talking about right back in the beginning, was from the performance measures data, you had seen over the last couple of years that the start-off time at intersections had been dropping down and down and down with the use of people using smartphones. And I know one of the applications you talked about was obviously the get ready for green application, about getting people off the line. In other words, a little bit quicker would end up saving a 5 to 10% improvement. Now, is that, I mean, those are, because one of the things that we always look at is it's all about the technology we can deploy today, as you were talking about, and the incremental improvements. And I think that's, one of the things that you guys have been, looking at on research and all the rest, which is quite exciting. You want to talk us through some of that?
Yeah, so when we look at that saturated flow rate for when we discharge from an intersection, the get ready for green, I think that's something useful for drivers that we can help to inform them to, I'll say, tune back in. And eventually, when that's tied into the vehicle, I think that'll be more natural, that people will get used to that and start to expect it. The get ready for green, it's interesting because we're trying to get information from controllers out there in the field to drivers. Right now, it's a 12-inch light that's hung over the intersection. And if you think about that, this is where it's going to be a really funny thing. In the future, if you think about driving 55 miles towards an intersection, you say there's a little 12-inch light out there, and that's what we used to say, whether you go or stop. I think that's going to sound quite crazy, versus the connected vehicle paradigm, where we want to say we want to get that information into vehicles. We want to try to share additional information to drivers that can be useful to them. And so that's what I think we're trying to do with that specific application, is to just help let drivers know, hey, get ready for green. It's about to start. Now, when we move to automated vehicles, that will be a completely different shift. And I don't really dabble in the automated vehicle realm, but really that will be completely different, where all vehicles could just move together as one platoon and stay pretty tightly formed.
Okay, so we're talking about, obviously, kind of some of the immediate impacts that you get from deploying a connected vehicle system. And you were talking about a bunch of the different things: pedestrian safety, vehicle safety, red light running, and so forth. Maybe now's a good time to actually walk us through your video that you shot in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, so if you want to pull that video up, that'll be great here. This video, so whenever we start to play, this video, so first off, I want to say it's 2 years old, which is exciting in that regard, that this has been out there for that long. We'll go through this video twice, and what you're seeing is with that smartphone, that smartphone is getting information from the signal. Now, the delay that you see is just simply driving underneath the signal until you arrive on that next link. When we've been testing on this, latency is well under 400 milliseconds. So when you're looking at this, and Peter, is the video still playing? It's
I paused it for you.
Okay, so we'll just go through this. Yeah. So up on the pole, I do want to point out here, this is great. We do have that DSRC radio deployed. It's interesting. We put those out there. This is where the story is going to get embarrassing. We really haven't used those radios that much. They have been very, very, very difficult to work with. I've talked with a lot of folks who have tried to set up the map files for those videos. Those map files, I've heard reports that can take up to 7 hours to do one intersection of a map file. Presumably you'll get going faster. I think that I've talked with a few folks who have scripts to help with it. So those radios are out there. I also heard as recently in January that those radios aren't supported any longer with security and some other firmware. And so with Lear, we're trying to figure out what may be going on. And there's lots of questions on that I can talk about. But so the DSRC radio is out there that if you were driving through, you could get SPAT information from that radio. Licensing was interesting. I would have to give a shout out to Mario down at ALDOT in Montgomery. We went through getting a countywide license for DSRC radios here in Tuscaloosa. Turns out that you also need site-specific licenses, which are, I've heard 3 different answers as far as whether they are or are no longer available. So what you're looking at, the phone over on the left-hand side, that is getting information over the cell network about the signal status. You're about to see a get ready for green right here where it notifies that signal head that's sitting up overhead. It turns and then you'll see this vehicle depart. One question I get on this video all the time is, isn't that cell phone distracted driving? And the answer to that one is no, it is certainly and absolutely not intended to be at all. If you look in the background, you will see an 8.4-inch media screen that's inside that Dodge, or I guess they're called Ram now. Oh, I should, Peter, if you want to pause right here, this would be great. This red light warning that we're about to do. The distracted driving, this is one of my favorite apps that is out here. And I've heard a lot of people tell me that you absolutely cannot do this with cellular technology or GPS. So Peter, go ahead and play this. We're accelerating towards this red light here. Red light. And we get a red light warning. That is done off of the GPS unit inside that cell phone over cellular communication networks. So that safety application right there is what we have at 85 intersections around here in Tuscaloosa for drivers that want that information. The cell phone is a short-term answer until this can ultimately make it inside the vehicle. I think I ask Peter every time I talk with him is the iPhone, the CarPlay and Android Auto, is it integrated yet where Travel Safely will be able to be in there? Peter, we'll have to get an answer from you on that one. But for us,
it's coming. It's coming. The guy's actually busy working on Android Auto right now. What we have done is we have integrated to Ford Sync. So the Ford Syncs are actually up there. And then, obviously we're sitting in the iATL now, where we've got multiple different manufacturers that are coming to test their vehicles with connected vehicle systems. So, there are a lot of different players playing in here, and we're also part of the 5G Automobile Association. And that's also playing a whole nother card in this, where there's a group of auto manufacturers, pretty much every single one of them, that we're basically looking at how do we improve communication between all these different groups and get connected vehicle technology into the vehicles. And I think that, that's where you went on and you said, well, there's the smartphone app that everybody in the public can get today versus waiting for someone to come up with a future device or system in the future.
Yeah, so for us, in that video, it's cool that it's been out there for 2 years. Any driver has access to it for free. It's out there at all of our intersections. And really, I think it demonstrates that it can be done with cellular technology and the GPS chip inside the phone. I would expect every single thing I said right there to improve in the future. GPS accuracy, that's an issue about how we're going to do that, whether you're doing DSRC or connected over cellular. The CV to N, I can only imagine that will be getting better in the future. So all of these things, I mean, right now when you look at that, you say, well, that's 2 years old. I don't think that that's that great. It is a start that we have out there deployed. And for me, that's exciting. I mean, if I was just stuck in this lab here testing radios, I think I'd be pretty bored and pretty bummed with myself when I went home each day. That's out here now in Tuscaloosa. So if you drive through the city here, make sure to download the app, use it. You can try it out. All the major intersections will have that. So Peter, I think that's that video. I don't know if you want to let it just play in the background here, and I'll see if I can do any other comments on it.
Yeah, I'll play that again for you. Absolutely.
So yeah, on that one, I mean, that's an old iPhone 6 now, which, I mean, it's exciting that these things have gotten better. The Get Ready for Green is one app, the red light warning. Pedestrians, if a pedestrian is using the app on the phone, that would also notify the driver there's a pedestrian in proximity around here. Cyclists is another thing that if you watch any of the applied information, I mean, that's fantastic. So again, driving through University Boulevard here, I mean, we have all those modes that we're concerned about and say, what can we do? Well, I can't just strap an OBU, a DSRC OBU to a pedestrian or a bike and say, there you go, you're all set. And also, by the way, let alone the software side of it. I mean, if you get that radio working, you still have the HMI interface that needs to happen. So for us, this right here is just so cool that, I mean, this is technology that I hope is making a difference, or at least we're talking about it making a difference. And so that's really cool to see that this is out here. So sorry, I told myself that I'm cool, right? This has been a fun thing to see deployed.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's also exciting speaking to you about it because obviously there's a lot going on there. One of the interesting statistics you're talking about, distractive driving, is from the statistics that we've gotten back is 93% of the users of Travel Safely use the app in the background. They're actually using, they're using Waze or Google Maps as their main app. Now, one of the questions I would ask is, okay, so we talked about, hey, we can get a wider audience of people using a smartphone app because it's free and you can get the public to actually use it. How are you guys getting this information? What are you doing with this information? How do you guys receive the information from all of these connected vehicle devices? And then what are you planning on using with it?
Yeah, so from a research standpoint, that's a really interesting question. There's, with the connected vehicle paradigm, we're trying to make sure that we have privacy preserved, make sure that security, and that on the radio side is really interesting. Peter, could you pull up a picture from your email? It's going to be the one that, it's going to be inside Tony English's dining room, which will be a very funny picture, and I don't think anyone will recognize it as a dining room. Yeah, this one right here. So the security side and trying to get this information back. The gentleman in the center of the picture in the white shirt at the laptop, that's Tony English. He's who I would consider the expert at connected vehicle radios, technology. His wife, Debbie, she has her CS degree. This was an interesting trip. We went out here in January of this year. That's Chris Sewell from ALDOT. And so we went out with a team here from UA. Just to learn about what they've done on that I-80 deployment, which is one of the biggest, certainly the freeway connected vehicle deployments. And so that team, they spent 18 months looking at security of radios. They have 12 students who work from them. They usually get there about 6 in the morning and they kick everyone out at 9:15 at night. My wife would absolutely not permit that type of activity to happen at our house. So, and further to that point is the connected vehicle security radios. That is not my area. I don't have my eye on that every single day. I wake up saying, what can I do to make them better? I like looking at the traffic side saying, how can we make the traffic part better? We recognize that security is paramount. Privacy is very important. All these things are critical, but ultimately at the end of it, for traffic engineers, for folks in that realm, that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we use that data? Peter, your question about how do we get that data, this is something that Applied Information certainly helped us with. When we're getting vehicle trajectory information, latitude, longitude, speeds, heading, I think that also comes in there. And then with that data, what do we do with it? So picture a giant table that you'll see later on with all these vehicles driving throughout your network. What do you do with that data? How do you say, I need to do this, or I need to take that action? And those are really, really tough things, especially if you think about a giant intersection with, say, 100 vehicles around it. 10 times a second, every vehicle refreshing and telling you where it is. It's a lot of information to process. So the security side, Tony and his team, they spent 18 months working on that. And I think they got one of two aspects of it working. And now with DSRC, I think that work's kind of idled right now. It's unfortunate to see the way that happened, but no doubt that it'll be used in the future in a different way. So applied information, what we're able to do is on the cellular vehicle to network side through the app, there is a table that we're able to see for users on there to see latitude, longitude, speed, and heading. All privacy maintained on that. The IDs are shuffled. I actually don't really care about the ID. That's actually the most boring part. What we're trying to look at is we're looking at one intersection seeing I have a latitude, longitude, speed, and heading coming through. What do I do for that record? What do I do for the other 3 records on the other approach? What do I do for the 4 records that are getting ready to come further out? So that's the type of thing that we're looking at. There is the data stream that we get is very, very friendly and useful from, I'm going to say, a civil engineering standpoint. I am not a CS person. I'm not an electrical engineer. And for me, I want to make sure that the data is usable in a traffic form that I could actually work with. And ultimately, we need to get it back into those controllers behind me. And so that's still a gap that we're working on.
So you're talking about a whole bunch of different things, and I know you've got another video that you've got queued up here that you wanted to talk about. And because we just talked about it, I know we were going to play it a little later, but why don't we play it now so you can talk through what the kind of data is that you're getting back and some of the other interesting projects that you alluded to earlier with trajectory-based detection.
This is one of the most intense videos I've put together. There's so much happening in it. What you're seeing on the right-hand side is my vehicle, and I'm driving with my Travel Safely app. And on the left-hand side...
You tell me when to pause.
Okay, I'll tell you in just a moment. Actually, let's go ahead and pause right now. So over on the left-hand side, I mentioned one thing that we are trying to do is until we have 100% connected vehicle penetration or adoption rate, we're going to struggle a lot with trying to figure out, well, for the folks who want to drive their 69 Camaros or their 71 Mustang or whatever, what can we do? And we've already identified that the smartphone app is something that could conceivably work. But for vehicles that don't have anything on it, how are we going to do this? And this is one of the most exciting things for me. On the left-hand side, we have, first of its kind, a radar deployment where we have 4 radars, 1 on each approach. Peter, if you want to pan up just a little bit or zoom out perhaps just a touch. So over on the very upper left side, we see 3 vehicles. We see that white Saturn, we got a white Durango, and we've got a vehicle behind it. And I'm going to show you, this is actually not perfect data. I'm okay sharing that. If you look at that stop bar, that white Durango is stopped kind of between lanes on a diagonal. It's actually recording as 2 vehicles. What you're seeing is you're seeing 4 records in that table on the lower left. That's similar to the connected vehicle data where we're calling it a virtual basic safety message. You get an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, a speed, and an estimated time to the stop bar. So it's similar data, but what it does is for every vehicle that's not connected, we're able to observe them at this intersection. The distance is about 950 feet. So even though we don't have 100% connected vehicles driving around, we can sort of start to work with that trajectory data paradigm. In the middle of the screen, you're seeing what the radar is actually showing us on the visual feedback from an overhead map. So, and on the right-hand side, let's talk about the lower right table. The lower right table, I had a bunch of grad students who were out driving around with me with our Travel Safely app. There's 9 vehicles out there. I have no idea what those IDs are on the left-hand side. I can see that we got 9 vehicles. I've got latitude and longitudes, speeds, and headings for everyone. The part that's a little scary is if you look at those 9 vehicles, it's up to you to figure out where they are, what they're doing, and how you should handle them wherever they are on your system. The radar is much more convenient because it maps it immediately to something that makes sense to us that's pretty easy to spot and check. So let's go ahead and continue on this video. There's going to be a lot that happens here. But this is the trajectory control that we're ultimately trying to get closer to. So my vehicle on the right, I'm coming around the curve. I've got one more curve to the right up here, and you'll start to see me come in frame on the left. By the way, just keeping the clock synchronized on this video was a major challenge. So here I come around the curve. You can see my vehicle in the upper left in the background with the headlights on. I'm on the approach where I start to get SPAD information. The radar has picked me up on the left-hand side, so there's one record in that table. The second vehicle now is in that table. You can see on the map where I'm located. I'm going to get a red light warning as I'm approaching this red light. And then, so somewhere in the right table, you'll be able to spot me based on that speed dropping to 0 on the second to last, I think. And then I'll pull on through this intersection. So this was a whole lot of coordinating clocks and software updates and IP addresses to make sure everything was set. But that's what we're working to on that trajectory control side. If we were to have that table, that was a pretty small, wimpy intersection. We picked it intentionally for that characteristic, that it was very low volume. Nice straight approaches that also help the radar out. But with that information, that data, what do you do with that in the future? And again, none of these controllers behind me, unfortunately, have that. There's one that's really close, but for Mr. Vickery's sake, I will not mention that one right yet.
So, you know, obviously you're doing a lot of this pretty cool research on all of these different things. What are some of the, what are some of the cool things you can do with all that information? How can you make the traffic controllers actually work better if every single vehicle, in your ideal world, if every single vehicle was a connected vehicle and you had all that data coming at the same time, what would you do with that from a traffic engineering perspective?
There's a big assumption you have to make right from the beginning is, one, am I going to observe a vehicle going for its entire trip from A to B? So let's say I was driving from my house to work. Am I going to know that the route that I'm taking, that I'm already mapped which way I'm going to go? Or do you not know that information and you only know what's happening at that intersection in the bubble around it that you know is 100 meters or 300 meters, whatever your radio capability might be? That's the one I prefer to work with. To track a vehicle end-to-end on trips, that's going to be major privacy concerns. And so with some of the probe data, we're trying to figure out how to work more with that data, but it hasn't gone smoothly. So when we're at an intersection, let's just pretend we draw a 1,000-foot circle around it, which is what those radars roughly work. I think we tested out to 950 feet. So if I can see every vehicle within that distance, if I know ideally every vehicle should drive through that intersection at, let's say, 30 miles an hour, anything less than 30 miles an hour, anywhere I see that vehicle slow down, anywhere I see that vehicle stop, anywhere I see that vehicle queue, I can keep track of that. I only want those IDs to just maintain as they go through the intersection to know what's happening. And again, my dad carries an aluminum wallet. I really try to be careful with privacy. I'm really not trying to figure out folks going to work, the grocery store, or otherwise. What we're trying to do is, if I just had a vehicle, just knowing that's coming through there, how do I keep them all moving as best I can and getting through that intersection? Tracking delay is one of the first approaches that we've used. We started looking at that. There are some other papers and work that we looked through, some colleagues over in Germany where we went over a year ago to look at some systems over there. The delay base works way better than what we were looking at with just running free off of traditional detection. So for us, that's the first, actually our third algorithm. I estimate there's probably 20 algorithms that we'll go through over the next year. I was just talking with Travis, a colleague, yesterday about the next one that we're going to start working on, and we're more excited and think it's going to do even better. So for us, that radar system, that's providing us with some early opportunity to be out in the field to watch safety, watch efficiency, see what we do with that data, and interact directly with one of these controllers.
So you're one of the kings of doing performance measures as well as connected vehicles. How are we going to take both of those information streams and put them together? Because I think, you know, that, I mean, I just see it in your background as something that you're an absolute expert in two fields. What's your thought on that?
So the thought on that one is the two different data streams. The one, the signal performance measure data, that's one data stream. The other one that's going to come in the future will be the connected vehicle data stream. And so with both of those, that's data, and then you have to figure out, what are my objectives? You can ask what are your goals at the highest level, minimize delay, minimize stops, but then when you're actually watching the metrics and measuring those and tracking that over time, we're saying, how do we improve those things? So to put those together, again, a few years ago, there is an old electromechanical controller in the background. I think it's, it's right behind me, right here. There's an old controller. And before we had any of the SPM data, one way that we like to talk about it is that it was like driving a car without a dashboard, right? You could do it, but if you're trying to figure out what is your speed, how is your engine doing, oil pressure, temperature, all of that, once you start to get that data and understand operationally how the system's doing, you can do so much more with it. So, I mean, if you were to just take, well, a speedometer will tell you a certain amount, but the onboard diagnostics on your vehicle now, OBD2, you get so much more information. So then you can do even more with it as far as what you're trying to achieve, whether it's fuel economy. And that would be exactly what we're trying to do here, is trying to say, minimize delay, minimize stops, improve safety. And then really other things that we're looking at now is fuel consumption. I got a colleague in mechanical engineering, brilliant guy over there, and that's what we're trying to do from a systems level, is look at fuel economy over a corridor to see how do we improve that and make that better.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I mean, there's so many cool things that we can do with all of this technology that's so exciting. Now, we were talking a little earlier about traffic controllers and how they receive information. So, you know, the current way that they receive it is through detector calls. Is there any way of getting information from connected vehicle devices to the current stream of traffic controllers?
Yeah, there's a few ways. On the connected vehicle side, over software, I think that's where I've seen most of the progress made on that one. Applied information, Peter, you know that we sat down, it must have been 2 years ago when we had the virtual detector card, where it was sort of a blank detector card that we could place calls from the Travel Safely system. That was a part that we came up with, and then we no longer needed it because we just started going into the software directly on the controllers. The other one that I'll talk about here, and I'll probably get beat up on this one later, is the exciting one is if you've ever seen a Cobalt controller, on the side, there is a secret panel here. And that expansion panel, there's actually a lot of opportunities that you can do with the connected vehicle coprocessor. That's what we're using for that radar system here in Tuscaloosa. So it's a secondary computer that goes inside there. We have to be careful on these controllers. And this is where I'm not a CS or computer hardware person. The controllers only have so much power to be handling the green, yellow, red, the call and extend phases. To load the connected vehicle data into that same platform, we're trying to separate channels, or separate, certainly on that one, hardware, with having actually two computers, one for the signal control portion, one for the connected vehicle portion. They will interact through a software bridge that's going to be in there, but we're trying to be careful as we move forward on that one. The horsepower on these units behind me varies. There are some old controllers that are back there too, but that's important as we try to watch what is the capability of the controller that we can do before we have to undergo serious hardware changes and updates for horsepower for more computing.
Awesome. Hey, we got a question from someone for Alex. What kind of comments and feedbacks are you getting from people using the Travel Safely app when you've showcased it to people, and from the users of the university people that are using it? What are some of the comments and the feedback that you get back?
Yeah, I'll be really honest with this one, because this one, it's interesting. And if anyone tries it, you're going to find the same thing here. You're going to use it the first time and you drive with it, and you're going to say, that's the coolest thing ever. And then the next time you're going to drive with it, you're going to say, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then the next time you're going to drive with it, you're going to say, it's just showing me what the green light's doing. The red light warning is important, I think, there. But what needs to happen, and this is the challenge with trying to get this actually implemented in reality, is once it's in the vehicle, where it's in the dashboard, where there's a lot of vehicles now where when you drive, it'll show you what the speed limit is. That information is actually kind of nice and useful. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to actively fire up your phone each time and have it ready to go. So it's a challenge to try to get people to use it, where the first time you see it, it's amazing because it actually is connected vehicles out there working pretty simple on your phone. For us on the research side, that's where we find the value in it. So if I fired that system up any hour of the day there, I'm probably not going to see any user on there, maybe one or two poking around. From the research side, we're excited about it, but the adoption part, that's still just something that we're working through with folks. where if you have to pull your phone out, get it mounted up, link to your vehicle or Bluetooth in there, I mean, there is some cost to that. If you're just running on a normal trip there, you may not use it. However, once it is more integrated into the vehicles on the connected vehicle side, that's where I think it'll be more natural as far as the use for the way people that will interact with it, or rather not interact with it, right? It should just be something passive in the background that you're getting that information. But there's a long ways to go on that. For us on the research side, though, it's been great.
Yeah, and I think, there's other researchers that are doing similar things. University of Florida was doing some research into, how do humans react to audible alerts? And I think that was actually a pretty exciting research project because they found out that, it was slowing down people when they were driving in a school zone and they got an audible alert. And as you were saying, Alex, before was, how do we get, everybody uses this 12-inch signal, this little ball up there, as their viewpoint, and in the future it's going to be in the car, and it's the kind of chicken and egg thing. What do you do before the cars come out with it? And we've got announcements by Ford that every vehicle in 2022, their 2022 models are going to have connected vehicle technology. So we all know it's coming. It's coming at a fast pace, which is pretty exciting. And I believe I fully agree with you. That's where the future is. But there's also the question of how you get pedestrians involved and cyclists involved, where they don't have a big computer on them, inside of a vehicle. How do you get those guys active?
Peter, let's pull up another picture there from the email that had 3. It will be the 3rd picture. When you start to talk about, Ford saying that every vehicle is going to start to have this, I mean, we get excited about that. But when we talk about this part of it, that's where we're a little fuzzy. And so on that 3rd picture, this is fine. Let me mention this one first. This is very, very interesting. So this is probably the bona fide good way of doing connected vehicles. And I say good, and that I'm going to laugh because, so what you're seeing here is that Connexus unit is a DSRC onboard unit. Just by itself, it's pretty boring because there's nothing that you do with it. If you look forward of it, there's an Android tablet. That Android tablet is actually the human-machine interface. Now, the other thing that you should see in this picture and be pretty disappointed in is that nasty mess of cables that's running up through the sunroof to the antenna on the Suburban. Now, here's the thing. We were doing a connected vehicle demo drive, and if you look at that Tesla that's just in front of us there, I mean, I don't think it could be any closer, really. Here's where the DSRC was such a disappointment. This is really kind of a bummer. We were in a neighborhood going 25 miles an hour, that close. The roof on the Suburban was too large for the antenna, and we couldn't actually communicate with that vehicle in front of us. So a lot of people will tell me, again, you can't do connected vehicles over cellular networks, and it must be DSRC. And when we actually saw that demonstration there and we were that close, it couldn't have been a better setup, and it wasn't working. That was a really, really frustrating part to see that. I mean, what do you do then? I-80 and the Wyoming deployment, they've done some awesome stuff with semis, trying to do custom antennas that are out on the mirrors so that when the trucks turn, the mirrors, they're not in the shadow of the trailer. I mean, they've done some awesome work on it, but the limitation on that DSRC on the radios themselves, that's a major challenge. And so the part that I'm so thankful for is I haven't had to get stuck with issues like 18 months of going through security credentials. How do you have someone who's unknown but approved, or known but approved? It's a very, very complicated security setup, and that's not my area. That's so I feel completely inadequate to answer any questions along those lines. Once we get past those hurdles in the future, we could imagine it's all working. That's what we want to do. Peter, if you want to go one more picture on that email there. There's one more. I will show the team here in just a moment. This picture right here. So one thing that we have going on here is we are doing an ATC MTD project. That's Advanced Traffic Congestion Management Technology Deployment. That's through Federal Highway Administration. Jeff Dogan and I have been talking for years about finally getting a project going, so it's cool that it took us 2.5 years to write proposals for this grant. And what we're doing, this is the I-80 deployment. They have 402 miles that are outfit with 76 of these sites, I think is the number. And that site, you can see up there, there is a DSRC radio along with a camera and a radar. The issue that we didn't want to run into is if DSRC is not the ultimate winner in this connected vehicle technology, what do we do? So applied information, this is something that Brian was so excited about. I'm so glad the timing worked out for our project. Peter, I don't know if it'd be possible for you to dig out a picture of that radio that you have, but the single unit that you have that has both CV to N, CV to X, and DSRC all in one box, that for us has been something that we really hope will help us to be future proof. We're doing 32 miles with about 30 to 35 of those sites. So we hope to have higher radio density. It will not be 100% coverage. There's actually an NSF project that's looking at ad hoc networks that we're involved with, and that's Xiaoyan Hong and Travis Atkinson about how do we do networks with moving objects. So with that, we're trying to look at in the future. Right now, if I really had to just talk honestly, I would think that CV to X looks like, and this is a battle with AT&T and DSRC and giants who are way bigger than me. The CV to X part, I think that'll be the winner is what it's looking like right now. It's still early on. I think you can get testing, and the licensing is just a whole nother issue. I probably won't go too much into that. But those technologies, trying to have something that will do all of it for at least the next 2 years until we can make up minds in the future, that's still just a battle that we're going to keep having conversations. I think every ITE, every TRB, we talk about this, about what it's ultimately going to be. And I remember 2015 hearing every vehicle will be connected in 5 years. And now, you know, every vehicle will be, Ford saying every vehicle will be connected. And we'll get there maybe someday, but in the meantime, we're still trying to figure out what we can do with other technology. So,
Alex, what I'd like to ask you, we've only got about 3 minutes left. What would your advice be to other agencies that are looking at deploying connected vehicle technology? What would you say if you were to take out 2 or 3 takeaways? What would your 2 or 3 major things of advice be for the people on the call?
The 2 pieces, let me try to do this. I'll start going through what I can here in this time. One is figuring out what you want to do. And I don't think you have to have a perfect answer. In fact, on research, I hope I have more answers that come in the future. If I have all the answers now, that's going to be really boring. So figure out roughly what you want to do. It's still maybe early on, and then go from that point forward. The other one is I would say talk with a lot of folks. Everyone was very supportive in helping me get around the country to talk with people. That was really important to go around and learn about what's been going on. Go out and talk with Tony English. If you can get on his calendar and meet with him, he's outstanding to talk with. I'd say talk with Applied Information. I really, we tried to get a visit to go up to M City, and we got an email back from the guy, and he said, you can come at 8:30 on a Sunday morning. That's the only time I can offer you. So folks who have been to M City, I mean, hopefully you've gotten good information there. Try to figure out what's going on as best you can. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can talk with folks, figure out what you want to do. Expect that the technology will change. Hopefully for the better, but those DSRC radios, it's going to be, we'll see what they do in the future for us. But luckily the CV to N, that's been the saving grace. And so that's been a great thing that we have out here deployed to work with.
And that's why for your next project, you were saying that you're going to be deploying multiple different radios, right?
Yes, that is correct. Trying to cover as many bases as we can. That's cost effective. So trying to walk those lines as best we can do.
All right, Alex, I know you did ask me to put this up, so I do have a slide of your team that I wanted to put up for you to talk about that.
This should probably be the third point, is work well with others on this one, and I hope I do that. This is so much fun. I mean, we have Tuscaloosa DOT, Temple, ALDOT, CAPS, Arcadis. Who else do I see in here represented on this one? Oh gosh, I feel like I'm going to miss someone on this one. Grad students are in here, research engineers. It's been a cool team. And so I immensely appreciate everyone who's been involved with this one. This is not a one-man show. That would be like the scariest thing ever. So I'm glad I get to work with so many fun people. So if you have any questions, I would just offer anyone on here, please feel free to reach out to me. My university email's on there. Hopefully you can find my cell phone. I'm happy to share that. So, anyways, I think that's what I got.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. We really appreciate it. I love speaking to you because you guys got so many exciting things happening. And as Alex said, reach out to us, reach out to Alex. I think the important part with all of those connected vehicle success stories, like Alex's success story, is speaking to others and actually talking to everybody and knowing, that there are people out there with experience like Alex, who's actually deployed this stuff for over 3 years, and they've learned over a 3-year period. So I want to end it off there. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next week, Tuesday, where next week, Tuesday, we've actually got a Hawaiian project that's been deployed in Honolulu, where they're going to be coming live to us, hopefully from the beach. That would be the best. So until then, we'll see you then. Bye-bye. Thank you, Alex.